we're going to have to contain them. And the only way to contain them, you don't have to be ugly about it, but you got to be very, very firm. Dealing with Putin is like hand feeding a shark. You can do it, but you have to do it very, very carefully.
That is Republican Senator John Kennedy's advice on how to handle Russian President Vladimir Putin. Senator Kennedy recently returned from a congressional trip to Russia where he says he told high-level officials to stop screwing with our elections. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana joins me now. Senator, thank you so much for being with us. You say talking to Putin's like feeding a shark. You can do it, but you have to do it very carefully. Did President Trump feed the shark very carefully?
Let me answer your question this way, and I will answer it, John. Here's what I wish the president had said. I wish he'd come out after the meeting and said, President Putin and I had a very frank conversation. I told him to stop acting like a thug. I told him if he wanted a better relationship with my country, he should stop trying to mug democracy. He should stop treating the truth like his mother's good china. He should get out of Ukraine, let him self-determine. Get out of Crimea, let him self-determine. Help us settle the mess in Syria and stop poisoning people in other countries. Now, that's not what the president said. He started out like a man on fire. He fussed at NATO, as he should have, for letting the American taxpayer pay most of the freight. He fussed at Germany for signing a gas deal with Russia. But at his press conference, and I watched it first live and then I watched it on tape, he was very uncertain, very tentative. He was clearly off his game. And I will tell you, I left after listening to both of them. I told my better half, Becky, I said, Becky, I'm not sure what the president said. Now, he's cleared it up. And regardless of what anybody says, I stand by what I said about Mr. Putin. Dealing with him is like hand feeding a shark. He even has eyes like a shark. No disrespect. Forget what he says. Watch what he does. If he meddles in our election this fall, and I told his colleagues this when I was in Russia, as did the other senators, if he messes with our election this fall, I believe Congress will double down on sanctions.
Okay.
Maybe triple down.
Okay, Senator, let's review a few of the things you said here. You said you thought the president was very ineffective, uncertain, you said, off his game.
Yes.
Do you feel that he looked weak standing next to President Putin?
He looked off his game. I've never had an at-length discussion one-on-one with Mr. Trump about how he feels about Russia, so I honestly don't know. You have to judge.
Well, but I think we have every reason to think we do know how he feels about Russia. He's asked about it frequently. He talks about it frequently. And we have every reason to believe what he has said in the past about Russian election meddling, which was actually consistent to what he said when he stood next to Vladimir Putin, which is he's not sure if Russia did it or not. The Russians have always told him no. He thinks that Vladimir Putin believes that it didn't happen. And you think the president clarified that statement?
Well, John, first, those are your words, not mine.
Okay.
Let me tell you what I was going to say.
Okay.
What I was going to say is I've never had a one-on-one conversation with the president about Russia. But here's what I think he thinks about Russia. I think he thinks that Russia did meddle in our election. I think he thinks, and I agree with him, that Russia's meddling did not determine the outcome of the election. I don't know how anybody who is fair-minded can point to a specific activity and say, yep, that's what tipped the election. Americans have a multitude of reasons for voting as they do. I think he understands the threat from Putin. I do think he wants a better relationship with Russia. I think the world would be safer if we had a better relationship with Russia. What I hope he understands is that, I'll say it again, trying to reason with Mr. Putin is like trying to hand feed a shark. Logic doesn't work. Right. You have to hit him in the face.
He did.
And say, if you do it again, I'm going to hit you in the face twice as hard. That he understands.
You can't sit here, though, and tell me that you thought that President Trump hit the shark in the face.
No, I just said he looked tentative. He looked off his game. I wasn't certain what he said, and I was very thankful yesterday that he came back. I didn't know if he'd do it or not, and said, "Hey, let me clarify what I meant."
And
now,
you buy the clarification. You buy the clarification that Wood versus Warrant. You buy the clarifications that it could be other people also. That's enough for you?
No, I buy his clarification about what he said at his press conference when people said, well, he's given in to Russia. I don't think he's given in to Russia. But what I think doesn't matter, and no disrespect, what you think doesn't matter, what anybody thinks based on words doesn't matter. People talk a lot in government.
What
and politics.
What actions?
Let's watch what they do.
What actions have you seen, or what words have you heard from President Trump that make you believe he is standing up to Russia on the history of their attack on the U.S. election in 2016, on the fears from our intelligence community that they might do it again?
Well, here's what I see. I see, number one, he told our NATO allies, start carrying the load a little bit. The American taxpayer getting tired of it. And, of course, one of the purposes of NATO is to contain Russia. Number two, he was very critical of Germany for establishing the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline with Russia. I mean, here we are on one hand, with our left hand, we're trying to contain them, and on the right hand, we're giving them money to buy weapons to try to kill us. And he fussed at Germany for that. Number three, let me finish.
Let me finish.
Number three, the president said last night, and I believe him, and I think Congress will hold him to his words. If they mess in our election, they try to meddle in our election, we're going to knock the hell out of them twice as hard, and I think we should. Now, if Mr. Putin wants a better relationship with the United States, I would welcome it. But he's got to stop acting like a thug, and the only way we're going to judge whether he really wants a better relationship is if he starts acting like it and changes his behavior. The guy does. I mean, I remember what President Bush said about looking in Mr. Putin's eyes. I haven't been as close as President Bush, but I've seen his eyes on television.
Yep.
He's got shark eyes. I mean, the man, I'm not saying he's either immoral or amoral.
You say you have to judge.
He understands power.
He understands power, and the question is President Trump projecting power when he stands next to him and equivocates over the Russian attack on the U.S. election? Is the president projecting power? When he tells Tucker Carlson last night, you talked about what the president said last night, when he tells Tucker Carlson, yeah, he often wonders whether or not it's worth it sending U.S. troops to help defend Montenegro if they're attacked. Montenegro is part of NATO. That is foundational to NATO. Does that project power?
Well, here's what I think. And I don't speak.
Can I ask you, I'm just trying to figure out, do you think that the president projected power to Donald Trump on the key issue, President Trump projected power to Vladimir Putin on the key issue of election meddling?
Here's what I think. I think you have to judge world leaders, including but not limited to politicians, not by their words, but by their actions. And we will be able to judge President Trump and President Putin by their actions. I believe that President Trump meant what, let me finish, Johnny. I believe that President Trump meant what he said. For example, if Russia meddles in our elections, and we'll know, our national intelligence agencies will tell us, we're going to hit him so hard that he coughs up bones. Now, I think the president will do that. If he doesn't, I'll come back on your show and say, the president should have done that, and I don't agree with him for not doing it, but I think he'll do it. And if he doesn't do it, I can tell you.
He hasn't done it yet, Senator. And let me just say this. This. It will be too late for the people of Montenegro to wait and see if President Trump sends U.S. troops to help them if they are perhaps invaded. It's too late then. The message needs to be sent now, correct?
Look, I didn't hear, I'm not trying to dodge your question, John. I honestly didn't hear the comments about Montenegro, so I'm kind of flying blind here. Part of President Trump's approach to management, and it's his choice. He's the president of the United States. He often thinks out loud. He clearly often grows anxious when he has let me finish.
I know, but
John.
Senator, you keep saying you keep talking about two different things. You keep talking about the need to project power, And then you won't tell me if you think the president is actually achieving that. And you serve a key role in the U.S. Senate, a key oversight role.
Let me say it again. You judge world leaders by their actions, not by their words. I've heard President Putin give an extraordinary speech before about how Russia embraces Western values and democracy. The last time Russia embraced Western values.
I won't interrupt you again. It's the last time I'll interrupt you. I promise. The last time I'll interrupt you. What
I'm
actions
to that, John.
Yeah, I promise. What actions have you seen from President Trump that make you believe that he will stand up to Russia on their attacks of the 2016 presidential election?
He has. Well, let me answer it in terms of. Let me answer it straight up in terms of the election. The president put sanctions at the urging of Congress on Russia for meddling in our elections. The president has said that if Russia does it again, we will double down on sanctions, and I think the United States Congress respectfully will hold him to that. Number two, part of the reason for NATO is to contain Russia. You can't do that without money. The American taxpayer's been putting up 70% of the money. The president said, if you want to contain Russia, by God, to our allies, put up your share of the money. Now, that's not pro-Russia. Number three, he was criticized for doing it, but in very candid terms, he fussed at Ms. Merkel for, on the one hand, saying we got to fight Russia over here through NATO, and in the right hand, saying, by the way, I'm just going to sign a multi-billion-dollar gas contract with Russia and give them money to buy weapons to try to kill us. And he called her out. I don't remember anybody on either side of the aisle up here in Congress calling her out over that.
Senator John Kennedy, Republican of Louisiana, thank you so much for the discussion this morning. On behalf of Shark Week, we do appreciate your time.
Thanks, John.
Allison?
You cannot